All right, here's another update for the NASCAR Black Money saga, I guess. Tuesday, December 9th, we got another day in court for NASCAR and the teams. On this day, Richard Childress is called to the stand and we hear from him. Now, I'm not sure if this actually worked out for the teams or if this really worked out for NASCAR. This thing went a little bit sideways, and here's a situation where it didn't really work out the way Richard thought it would. So Richard Childress, along with his co-team owners, which I didn't know he had co-team owners, have been actively looking to sell some of their ownership in RCR for the last 5 or 6 years. Richard Childress only owns about 60% of RCR, which is Richard Childress Racing. The other 40% is owned by a company called Chartwell Investments. Anyways, they've been looking to sell some of their ownership stake, and a suitor that they found was Bobby Hillin Jr. This was not too long ago. Bobby Hillin Jr. came up with this Project Ruffino, which is just the sort of acquisition name. Whenever this comes up, Richard Childress is confused by this because this was all a part of an NDA. Whenever these contracts get signed or anybody's trying to get information about your company, what you can do to protect your company and any trade secrets is have them sign an NDA. And an NDA is a non-disparage agreement or a non-disclosure agreement. It basically says anything you learned from this sort of communication and information gathering, you can't then use against us or give to anyone else. So Richard Childress is a little bit confused how information about this attempted acquisition, the Project Ruffino, and how NASCAR's lawyers even know about it. So in these documents, Richard tells Bobby that RCR has had a positive EBITDA for every single year the company has been in business. Now, an EBITDA means earnings before depreciation and amortization. Essentially, it's revenue. It means the company is making money. RCR was founded in 1969, making the company 56 years old. Richard Childress again says this is all part of an NDA, and he's not sure how anybody is aware of this or knows anything about this. He shouldn't be talking about it because it's all a part of an NDA. Visibly frustrated in the courtroom. The NASCAR lawyers reveal RCR made $123 million in revenue in 2024. $70 million of that was from racing. RCR had a 29% increase in revenue since the New Deal. And this is where we get a little bit more information. We have information. If you've looked online, you've seen the Team 1, Team 2, Team 3 type stuff. It's a bunch of different companies. It's RFK, it's Penske, it's Hendrick Motorsports. They've all been sort of anonymized, and we get sort of some baseline numbers from them, and they weren't required to give anything else but just how much did you spend on parts, how much do you pay your drivers, that kind of stuff. They didn't ever dig into it and find out why are you spending this much money on this weird thing. Nothing like that. So this information that the discovery in the court case got from the other teams was very broad. So after this information is brought up about the Bobby Hillin Jr., Project Ruffino, RCR trying to sell some of its ownership stake, the 2311 and FRM lawyers are completely caught off guard by this because they have no clue how NASCAR had any of this information and how they got into this NDA. The next day, the court would start, the judge telling NASCAR that they need to disclose how they got that information. But we'll go back to the 9th, and here's some comments from Dale Jr. and his sister Kelley. They said they're very surprised at all the stuff that's coming out and at all the stuff either side would ever want getting out. And they sounded very concerned. They said they'd both like for the teams to get a little bit more, but structurally they would like NASCAR to stay the same. They would like for the teams to get more money. Dale says NASCAR has been taking a beating in the public perspective. Kelley seemed hyper aware that the sport as we know it could go sideways and people could lose sponsorships and fans could lose confidence in the sport as a whole. They seemed to sort of tiptoe around a lot whenever they were talking about the lawsuit topics, and obviously didn't talk about anything too controversial. But Dale Jr. did go into a little bit of a NASCAR rant when he talked about North Wilkesboro, saying that we should have never went to the LA Coliseum, and instead we should have went to places like Bowman Gray and North Wilkesboro. Essentially saying we're playing to a crowd of a bunch of people that don't care about NASCAR. Dale suggested that a cost cap would be good for the teams. He and Kelley were both disappointed at how out of touch and stubborn the France family, or Jim France, and the executives in NASCAR had been. The overall feeling is that FRM and 2311, their lawyers are trying to turn this case into a teams versus Jim France instead of a teams versus NASCAR. It was Jim France that made these decisions and decided that there should be this deadline and we should do this game theory where we tell them all that they have to sign it, and if they don't sign it, they're going to lose their charters. And it worked out for the most part, except for 2311 and FRM holding out. On the 10th, we hear from Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck after the proceedings that day. They both seem to be a little bit dumbfounded as to why NASCAR would even go through with this lawsuit. This lawsuit is costing them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they both believe the teams are going to end up with some version of permanent charters anyway. So NASCAR has spent a ton of money, and essentially they're just hurting their own reputation. So this whole case is a little bit weird because NASCAR can't say that the teams are making a profit if they can't show how they're making that profit. At the same time, NASCAR doesn't want to go after the teams, because if they do and they hurt the teams, they essentially hurt themselves. Would fans show up to watch a race if all of Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs and Penske, if all their drivers were sort of ran through the mud and there was some sort of tax evasion scandal throughout the sport? So it's a weird situation because NASCAR, they really can't go after all the teams. They have to just try to go after 2311 and FRM and try to use like a scalpel and try to take them away from all the other teams, when realistically 2311 and FRM are running their team the same way that all the other teams run theirs. And so if NASCAR goes after to hurt those two teams, they're probably hurting all the other teams as well. This has to be very frustrating for NASCAR because they might be right that the teams are making a profit and that they don't need more money and they don't need all these extra conditions in the charter, but you can't hurt the teams because you hurt yourself. So I'm not sure what NASCAR is going to do. This trial is expected to end in a couple of days with both sides being done, but the reporters like Jeff Gluck and Bianchi fully expect NASCAR to lose this and then for NASCAR to appeal, which just drags everything out. It's so stupid. It's really dumb. So I'm not sure how much more information will come out about the black money, because it only serves to hurt NASCAR as a whole if you expose how the teams are making their money. You just have to assume they're making money, but going to court and proving that they're making money and making them look bad only hurts your own business. It's a tough position for NASCAR to be in because the teams are going to essentially come after them every time now, but this is the bed they've made.